Well, what's up again, guys? Brian here at 3TR. Welcome to another episode of the People's Questions, where I answer all the awesome questions that you guys have sent me over the past week. Before I begin, I would just like to make a little note of something I've been starting to see in the comment sections, and it's actually starting to make me a little bit happy. But recently, I've actually been seeing that a couple of you, or maybe just one person in particular, has actually been answering the questions that people have been actually sending me for like maybe the past 2 or 3 episodes. And I would just like to say right now, keep going. Not because I feel like I'm lazy or anything, but what this tells me is it's getting me the idea that some of you out there are starting to get to know me pretty well. So if you see someone post a question for something I've answered before, or you feel like you can answer that question perfectly as for what I would say go with it. And if you are a little bit off, or if I need to correct you, then I will answer the question myself. But I really do appreciate you guys actually taking the time to get to know me pretty well, so keep it up. So starting off real simple with the first question, coming from Tom Possessed, awesome name, and you want to know what was my opinion on the Snake versus Sam Fisher matchup from Death Battle. I absolutely loved it. It was my favorite. It's my favorite Death Battle to date. I think it got the characters perfectly right, and I think the outcome made it made perfect sense in terms of the contents of how these guys would engage each other. I even really liked how they got their support group members involved, because I think that that's definitely something that would happen. So as far as you need to know, I absolutely loved it. The next question comes from Queen Vivalada, and you want to know if DMC is how Dante and Vergil fell out, which I don't think it is, because I think it's completely non-canon, because every real Devil May Cry fan knows that that's not a Devil May Cry game. But if I had to rethink how they fell out, I would have to say that it would have to be something maybe a little bit personal, because in Devil May Cry 3, we're not really given much explanation as for what the beef is. From what we know, I think it's a simple matter of Vergil's lust for power is dangerous. I don't see a real personal reason for Dante or Vergil to really go at each other. And so that's the impression that I got, because Vergil simply wants Dante's part of the amulet so he can get power to their father's sword, which will then grant him the power of Sparta. I don't really see that as a bad thing, because Vergil never really seemed like an evil person to me. But I think that Dante feels that if he gets a hold of their father's power, then he might be consumed by it, and then he'll be an even more dangerous threat. And so Dante kind of feels that he needs to stand between Vergil and the power itself. For all I know, Dante has no lust for the power of Sparta itself. He very much is focused on his own power within himself. But I think that Vergil is just a little bit too power hungry, and I think that Dante thinks that's a dangerous thing. So I think that's the only real major beef that they have. Next question comes from Cassie J. Williams. You want to know, what were my thoughts on the final dinosaur fight in Jurassic World? I thought it was kind of hilarious. You really could call that like a wrestling match, because I thought it was just funny that the T-Rex was getting its ass kicked, and then the Raptor comes in to make the save, and they're doing these tag team moves where, like, if the T-Rex is getting into trouble, the Raptor comes in, the Raptor gets thrown out, that gives the T-Rex the opening it needs to attack, and then in the end, this gigantic whale-like dinosaur ends up winning and taking it out, and then the T-Rex and the Raptor kind of nod at each other, and they acknowledge each other with some sort of respect, which I doubt would actually happen, but I thought it was hilarious. Next question comes from Gundam Samurai, but someone did answer that question already, so I appreciate that. But the next question I will answer comes from the Immortal Super Being, and you want to know, who do I think is the smartest villains in these 5-game series? Batman Arkham series, Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy, and Infamous. Okay, starting off real simple. Batman Arkham series, the Riddler. Resident Evil, I'd go with Wesker. Metal Gear Solid, I would go with Otacon. Final Fantasy, I'd go with Ultima Cia. And Infamous, I would probably go with Kessler. Next question comes from Senti Scarpino. You want to know, which is my favorite version of the Screw the Rules, I Have Money line? For those of you that don't know, that comes from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged series, if I remember correctly, from Seto Kaiba. Screw the Rules, I Have Money. I can't think of a particular episode that does that, but I do know that there was a tiny alteration of that was like an abridged version of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0, which came out only in Japan. And instead of saying "screw the rules, I have money," he says "screw the rules, I have green hair." And I just think that's hilarious every time I hear it. Next question comes from Matt Cruz. You want to know, what is my favorite scene from the original Star Wars trilogy? Okay, specific scene, not sequence. I think my favorite scene from the original trilogy had to be in Return of the Jedi. I think it was the scene where Luke is trying to convince Vader to kind of switch sides. I think that little exchange between the two is very, very good, because that's really the only scene I can think of where you really get into Vader's head in terms of his motivation. And I think my favorite line from that scene is when Vader says that he must obey the Emperor. And what I got from that line was it sounded like Vader did not really want to do this. And Luke could sense that too. And so there was a little bit of hesitation. And I think that was very, very well handled very well. And that's why that's my favorite scene in the original trilogy. Next question comes from Demetrius Pugh. You want to know, will I be able to make the the Skull, Leonhardt versus Cloud in the next season of the Versus series? You know what? I'm probably going to end up doing that. I'm right now putting the finishing touches on the script for the Assassin's Creed matchup, which is coming very soon. I'll be able to get an update on that probably in the next few days. But for that matchup, you know, seeing how Dissidia is going to come out in January, I believe the 18th, that's just too long for me to wait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up this season, and I'm going to start season off 1 with that matchup, because I want to get gameplay footage from Dissidia. That's what I'm waiting on. So yes, that will probably be the first matchup for season 4. Next question comes from JBat. You want to know, am I willing to give Red Dead Redemption a try when it releases? I don't know. I played the first Red Dead Redemption for like an hour, and I thought it was the most boring open world game I'd ever played, and I just absolutely hated it. In a similar situation, I was kind of like that with the very first Assassin's Creed. Where I played Assassin's Creed for like an hour. I absolutely hated it, and I never went back to Assassin's Creed 1. But for some reason, when I played Assassin's Creed 2, I was instantly hooked, and that was the game that made me a fan of the franchise all the way up to Assassin's Creed 4. I'm not sure if that's going to happen with Red Dead Redemption. Maybe if I hear enough, you know, good things about it, or if enough people encourage me to give it a try, maybe I will. But as it stands right now, I have no intention on playing it. Next question comes from Diadrive CJ, and you wanted to know, have I ever or would I like to attend a video game music orchestra, such as video games like, okay, oh, so basically a concert that plays video game music? Absolutely. If any were to stop by here in Vegas, if it was for any major franchises that have really good orchestral music, then I would absolutely go. Next question comes from Hugoblood881. You want to know, given Wolverine's skills and overall experience, is there anything he could teach or help Solid Snake improve himself? I don't really think there's anything he would need to teach him. There's nothing Wolverine could probably teach him in terms of stealth. I mean, Snake, anyone who's in Foxhound, anyone like that, he's got stealth down pretty well. Fighting martial arts, I'm not really sure. I mean, Big Boss made sure that Solid Snake's bases were pretty well covered. And heck, if he can beat Gray Fox in a fist fight, there's not too many people I don't think he could beat in his prime. So I don't think there's really too many things that Wolverine would be able to teach Solid Snake. Next question comes from Yoda. You want to know, have I watched Naruto, or I don't know, yes, I have seen a few episodes of it. I'm not like a big fan of it, but there are elements or specific episodes of the show that I really, really like. Next question comes from Goku-san. You want to know, do I think that Shepard has superhuman strength somewhat due to his cybernetics? And someone already answered that question, and I absolutely have to agree with them. And the next question of the episode comes from Jalen Bradford. You want to know, when they make Resident Evil 8, who do I think is going to be in it? I don't know. I didn't like Resident Evil 7. I didn't really play Resident Evil 7, and if they continue in that direction, I would prefer if they just rebooted. I mean, just looking from where 6 was to 7, 7 just seems like it was a big step backwards in terms of the threat level. I didn't think the threat level was nearly as high as 6. It felt like they were just trying to suppress it, bring it down to a much more traditional horror style, which is okay, but I would have felt better if they just rebooted the entire franchise and just give us a completely new cast of characters to deal with. But I really don't know who they're going to put in 8. I really can't say. And the last question of the episode comes from Bill Z. And you actually had the most interesting question I saw. And you want to know, what is the worst person I've ever met on YouTube or anywhere else on the internet? There's only one YouTuber I can openly say I don't like. I don't think this girl's a bad person, but just our last exchange was just really, really bad. Some of you might have heard of this YouTuber, but her name is like Sexy Sniper Wolf. She's like pretty popular. She's got like over 1 million subscribers. And I actually got to meet her at my first E3 years ago. And she seemed really nice. However, that moment when we took that picture that you're seeing was very, very odd, because her boyfriend at the time took it, and when I actually asked to take a picture of her, he seemed really kind of pissed off. Now I was able to kind of size him up, and I was like, you know, if this guy wants to, you know, if he wants to go a few rounds, I'm sure I could take him pretty well. So I wasn't too worried about that. But after that, I tried contacting her again because she claimed to be a fan of Metal Gear Solid, and I simply wanted to ask if we could do a video just kind of debating about things about Metal Gear Solid. And she said that she didn't like people that disagreed with her. And I kind of took that as a bit of an insult, because the whole point of being a fan, I think, in any genre is that people are going to disagree with you. You're going to see it a different way. And if you don't like people that have a different opinion or see it better, then I don't really think that's the kind of person I really want to be around. I mean, trust me, there are things about my Versus Series matchups that I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me with, and that's perfectly fine. I simply, you know, I respect other people's different opinions, and it was clear to me that she didn't feel that way. And it was also very clear to me that she actually is not really that much of a Metal Gear Solid fan. She may know what happens in the games, but there's a big difference between knowing Metal Gear Solid and understanding it. And I guarantee you, she does not understand Metal Gear Solid one bit. That much I would bet my entire game collection on. And that's why she's like the one YouTuber that I stopped watching years ago. I've not watched a video of hers like in like years. And I heard she had some sort of incident with another popular YouTuber. It was all over YouTube like maybe a few months ago. I don't know what happened at that point. I even heard she got arrested and went to jail for a little bit, which, you know, I personally didn't care or have much sympathy for. But I would say that Sexy Sniper Wolf is probably the one YouTuber in all of YouTube that I don't really like that much. I don't think she's a bad person, but I just think that her way of thinking is just, it reflects the kind of people I don't really like to associate myself with. And with that, those are the questions that you guys sent for this particular episode. I'd like to thank all of you guys for making this episode possible. If you guys have any more questions you'd like me to answer in next week's episode, be sure to type them in the comments down below. Make sure to get them into me before next Wednesday, before I start filming this. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will see you next time.